I want to now get into your life as you developed into the wonderful person who managed to do a wonderful job of serving our county. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did?
Well, my first job was real estate and insurance. And then my daughter was born in March of 1963. And I stayed home for a while, just about 3 months, I think. And I went absolutely berserk staying home. So I knew Ed Bislin from Glen Spey, and he had an insurance and real estate office, and he stopped at the house and asked me if I would come to work for him. So I did, and I was there for, I believe, 7 years. And then I left and I went to work in Monticello it was Baum and Gersten. They were lawyers. And I had never done legal work, but they trained me how, and I stayed there for, I believe, 13 years. And then I was offered the position of deputy county treasurer, and I took that because it was more pay and insurance and everything, retirement, all that stuff. So I took that, and then I was there. My boss was Dan Briggs at the time, and he got booted upstairs to management. He was a county manager, and then I ran for county treasurer, and I was county treasurer for 5 years. Then I became 65, and my husband said, "What are you crazy?" So that was it.
But you managed to serve on a county level
Yeah.
and did a wonderful job, and you were elected to that position.
Yes, twice.
So
because
that's
when
something.
Danny left, I had to run for a position to fill his term, which was only 1 year, and then I had to run for 4 years for my own term.
You also volunteered for a lot of different service organizations. Tell us about what you did for our fire company.
Well, after I retired, Jim Galligan became town supervisor, and he couldn't be treasurer of the fire company anymore. He asked me if I would do that. So I did that for about 3 years, I think, 3 or 4 years. And then I gave it to somebody else.
Were there any other service organizations?
Not
Probably.
really, not really.
But you were always a person that people felt they could go to if
Yeah.
they needed
yeah.
any kind of
I
help
hope
or
so.
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know anything? This would be going back again in time, because the proximity to the house that your husband's family wound up founding and where you lived was so close to Merriwell Park. Some of the borders are adjacent. Did you know anything about people in Merriwell Park?
Not really, because Merriwold stayed pretty much to themselves,
Exclusive.
Yeah.
But you certainly did a wonderful job of collecting a lot of information that you were kind enough to share with me.
Well, every time I saw something in the newspaper that was relative, I cut it out,
You've also been managed to be a wife of a rather interesting gentleman. Would you tell us a little bit about what your husband did for the town?
Well, he belonged to the fire department, and he was an assessor for a while, for I don't know how many years exactly. And he helped to build the firehouse, And in fact, he and Steve Cross painted the firehouse. He broke his arm 1 year, and he didn't have anything to do, so he and Steve painted the inside of the firehouse,
Another very caring person, caring about community. And then that seems to me that the daughter that you had sort of followed in that community service situation. Would you tell us a little bit about her?
Well, she ran for office a few times. She ran one time for councilman, and she didn't make it. And then she got to be deputy town clerk under Evelyn Parks. And
God
she was deputy for quite a while with her. And then when Evelyn retired, Joanne took
Very
over.
difficult.
She ran.
very responsible job. And I know that she was just recently given accolades on a state level
Yeah,
for being, our town got
Yeah.
notoriety
right.
because out of all of the town clerks all over the state, she was picked out and honored for
Yeah.
her abilities.
Right,
It's an awful lot of work and responsibility town clerks do.
right, right.
And then you have grandchildren,
Yes, 3 grandchildren.
and they're all off doing their
They're
things.
all over the place. The oldest one is, I think he's 27, and he is a EMT for the FDNY.
Service.
And my granddaughter, Amy, is going to be 26 in the 5th of November, and she is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Right now, she works for a company called Zimmerman Advertising, which is supposed to be the 15th biggest in the country. And my youngest grandson will be 20 in March, and he's a junior at Fredonia, and he is taking communications.
I happen to have come to know him in the 2 past summers. He also did a lot to support the community. He became a lifeguard.
Yes, I know that.
Yep. And he served as a lifeguard for a number of years here. And he helped with some of the Renaissance programs.
Mhm.
He just has a wonderful community spirit. So I think that you should feel very proud of the legacy that you've left. And if you have anything else you think I haven't asked you or haven't covered or anything you'd like to talk about, please take this opportunity to do that.
Well, I don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff with the Darlingtons. We had Dr. Darlington, who was the older of the company, of the family, and then he had a son and a daughter, and the daughter, Dorothy, is buried in the cemetery up here, which I
Really?
didn't know. I just found that out lately.
I didn't know that either.
And
Is that the one on Route 42?
yes, the old cemetery right here.
Okay.
And so is Miss Strunk buried in there. She's buried in under those big pine trees right in the middle.
Now, she was, some of the written material I have has her initials.
Yes.
Was she sort of like a manager at the camp?
She was, but I also think at one time maybe she might have been a like a nanny to the kids when they were small, because if you go back in the census rolls, she and Dr. Darlington and his son Clinton Pelham Darlington, they were all together. So I think maybe she was a nanny to those kids. Clinton Pelham had two. He had a son and he had a daughter, and they have both died. The daughter died some years ago of cancer, and the son just died. He was getting pretty old, like in his 90s, I think, but he just died a few years ago. And his wife died also.
Lydia's house is still there on the corner, isn't it? Didn't she live at the Four Corners?
Miss Trunk lived, when you go up the hill from the light at Four Corners, the first house on the left was Miss Trunk's house.
Right.
And she had, I think, 3 bungalows in the back that
I
she
never
used to
knew
rent
that.
out. I
So
think they're
that was
probably
part of-
dilapidated now,
Yeah.
but, you know, that was a long time ago, too.
That would go back to the time in Forestburgh in the 20s when
Yeah.
so many of the local residents...
Oh, that was even before that,
Yes.
after that, because my mother used to clean those bungalows for her.
Olga, you just reminded me of something. I noticed that there's a very oriental-looking building on your property. Is there a story about that?
That was part of when the World's Fair in 1903, and I believe it was extended to 1904 because they had trouble getting ready for it. They had a Japanese pavilion over at the World's Fair in St. Louis. And rather than take it apart and ship it back to Japan, they gave it to Dr. Takamine. Now, our property was owned by Dr. Takamini's son and his wife, but she got in a divorce with the son. I believe that was Eben, and he wound up dying. I don't know, he fell out of a window or off a roof or something in New York. And she sold the property in 1946 to Richie's father. And that building, that Japanese building, was part of Shufuden.
That's interesting.
And there
I'm
used to be a
worried
barn
about that.
up at the top of the driveway, but that fell down. Part of it fell down before Richie and I got married, and the other half of it, it was kind of like there was a big part in the middle and two wings, and this wing was gone already, and this wing fell down. I think it was the first winter we were married, and then Richie tore the building down and built a new garage.
That's certainly interesting that you have that piece of property. What's the interior like? Do you ever use it, or?
Oh, I have it rented. Actually, I have it rented to the same family for like 50 years. It was Bob Mastro's cousin.
They actually live in the building.
Yeah, well, it's not really good for this winter because it's not winterized. It's not insulated or anything. But they would come in the summertime and they would stay there all summer. Yeah.
What a pretty place.
So,
And you take such good care of it. It looks lovely.
so.
Yeah, was it repainted at any point? Or?
Oh yeah, a couple of times. The Giannas do that.
They do that.
They do that. And we
Oh.
put a new roof on. Richie was still alive when we put a new roof on because he wanted that bright red roof, and the only way you could get it would be that metal,
Yes.
came in that bright red. It used to be a chicken coop. When Richie's father was alive,
You're
he had
kidding.
chickens going in and out. I have
Wow.
photos in the old photo album with chickens going in and out. The first one over there is the Heartwood Barn, and it was getting pretty raggedy, and a few years ago they refurbished it, and that's how they refurbished it. They made it stone, they made it very pretty inside, and in fact I went to a wedding there a few years ago that, and it was all cleaned up. It was nice, It's been there for quite a while. When we had our sesquicentennial in 1989, we had a Harvest Moon dance in there at the end of October. In fact, it was this day. It was the 31st of October, and we had snow, believe it or not. And that is our cabin that was discovered. It was somebody down the road about 2 miles. Used to belong to Timer's grandparents, but when somebody else bought the house, those people died, and somebody bought the house, and they found that cabin inside the house. Now, whether they tore it down or what, I don't know. Tore part of it down, I don't know, but they rebuilt the cabin and moved it up here, and Walter Aretz, he's passed away now, and Peter Osborne from Port Jervis was the historian, and they put the cabin back together, and it's right across the driveway. And the last one was an old sawmill that was not too far from your house. I think the wood was prepared there for the first house, the one that burned down a few years ago. And those pictures were all done by a man named Richard Case, who lived in Heartwood. He lived below the Galligan Road, and I believe he was an illustrator for magazines, whether it was Collier's or if he freelanced for different ones, I'm not sure. But he was a very nice man too, and he did the sketches for our sesquicentennial plate.
Ah.
Olga, I can't thank you enough